Hey everyone, welcome back to a new video. Today's video is a little bit different. It's going to be a compilation of some of my narrations which have been animated and brought to life. If you enjoy it, I'll definitely post more of them. You can find all the original animation channels down in the description. Also, once again, if you have your own scary story that you'd like to send to me for possible narration here on the channel, you can submit that on my website at southerncannibal.com. All that being said, I hope you enjoy the video. And now, a word from our sponsor. Happy birthday to Raid Shadow Legends. Raid Shadow Legends, which is my favorite mobile game of all time, is officially 2 years old. You might have heard of it already, but let me tell you why there's never been a better time to dive in and start playing it. Something that I really like in Raid personally is that you get access to some pretty awesome characters right from the jump. My favorite champion at the moment is Gaelic, who's an epic orc warrior. Then there's also the insane final boss fights, which really kicks things up a notch. This month is Raid's 2-year anniversary, and the schedule's absolutely packed with amazing events. They've got 6 straight weeks of anniversary events and tournaments running from March 1st all the way through the middle of April, all of them with really insane prizes you can win. They're even launching their first clan vs clan tournament to give players a chance to compete directly against another clan to see who comes out on top. And if that's not enough, they're also releasing the first champion in the badass looking Shadowkin faction, which I absolutely can't wait to see. I'm definitely going to try and get my hands on them. Raid's huge already, and their whole anniversary event makes it an awesome time to join the Raid community, so don't wait around. If you want to get a huge head start in Raid, all you have to do is hit the link in the description or scan the QR code that you're seeing right now, and you'll get your free epic champion Jotun, who's absolutely amazing for the Doom Tower. You'll also get 100k silver, 50 gems, and the 3 ancient shards so that you can summon awesome champions as soon as you get in the game. Check out this cool champion that you'll get for free. You'll find your extra rewards here in your inbox for the next 30 days only. You can find me in game under the name Canny_YT, and if you're quick enough, you can even join my clan. And it's that simple. Just click the link in the description, and I'll see you in the game. When I was 9, I was staying home alone. It was early morning, and I had just gotten out of the shower and brushed my teeth. I put on my favorite outfit, set up a little area in the living room with a drink and a snack, and then turned on the TV to watch something. The phone rang. I went across the house to go answer it. The voice on the other end was, well, really familiar and really comforting for me. He asked me about my day so far, and he made small talk. After about a minute or so, he then said,
"I like your outfit. Is pink your favorite color?"
I replied back with, "Oh, thank you. No, it isn't."
"What were you planning on watching on TV?"
he asked. It took me a few seconds to understand what was happening, as I was only 9 years old and very naive. The voice on the other end of the phone then changed. It became deep and raspy and horrific. The voice then proceeded to describe all these horrible things that they wanted to do to me, and in detail. I went numb. My skin felt as if it were on fire, and my heart was racing. I had never been more terrified in my entire life. I slammed down the phone, and then I called my mom at work. I tried to explain what happened, and I'm not sure I was making much sense. She got on to me for answering the phone, and she told me to go back about my day. I remember trying to explain to her that he was watching me, and that he told me what I had been doing, and that he knew what I was wearing. I also mentioned that I was going to call 911 because I needed help. "That isn't necessary. I'm not coming home. Just don't answer the phone and go watch TV," she said, and then I hung up. I was really confused and I was scared. I could feel his eyes on me. I pulled the curtains closed and I raced around the house, torn between doing what I felt was right and doing what I had been told by my mother. This whole time the phone was ringing. The second it would stop, it would just start up yet again. The sound of the phone ringing would pulse through my entire body like electricity. It was practically paralyzing me. It was like I was frozen but also on fire at the same time. I waited for a pause in the ringing and called 911. "I'm home by myself and I'm 9 years old and someone's watching me and telling me they're gonna kill me," I told the operator. She tried to keep me calm and she said that she would send help for me. I remember standing there listening to this kind voice just trying to help me, but I could feel every scary movie scenario just playing out behind me. Was he creeping up behind me with a knife? Was he going to shoot me through a window? Was he going to throw a rock through the glass and open the door? I just didn't know. I couldn't breathe and I couldn't feel my body. In a moment of panic, I set off the alarm to the house and ran outside. I remember this sense of relief, but also this overwhelming feeling of having a separation in my reality. The house felt small and dark and really dangerous and cold. Outside felt open, as well as safe and warm. I could hear lawnmowers and the sounds of birds chirping. It was a beautiful break from that bone-chilling feeling of the phone. It was like I was watching a movie and I could see myself experience both of these environments at the same time. A neighbor was pushing his child in a swing. He was concerned. He let me stand next to him and he protected me. I could hear the sirens now, the blaring sound getting louder as they grew closer. It felt like it took an eternity, but the police finally arrived. An officer walked over to me and he asked me what happened. I did my best to explain it, but so many of the words on the phone that were used were just so embarrassing. I couldn't bring myself to use such adult words to a police officer. And his other words were just bone-chilling. I couldn't say those either. To this day, I can still hear my young voice repeating the words. He was watching me. He said he was going to kill me. Not long after, my mom's car pulled into the driveway. She, for some reason, decided to come home. She didn't look for me or come to speak to me. She just calmly got out and then walked over to the police officer. I was standing in the doorway from the house to the garage just facing the driveway. I could see my mom and the police officer. I was watching and trying to understand, trying to figure out what was happening. Then I saw it. She was laughing. My face was swollen from tears, my heart still racing, and my skin was on fire. And my mom was laughing? What the hell was going on? Very slowly, I crept a little closer, and I then overheard. "I'm so sorry about this. I guess she just got scared being home alone and overreacted. I'm really sorry. What the hell's happening? What did I do wrong? Did I imagine this? Was this a dream? Should I not have called 911? Did I actually overreact?" My memory of what happened after that is a little hazy. I remember refusing to stay home alone and the sound of the phone ringing just rippling through my body. It wasn't something I liked discussing. I refused to repeat what had been said to me by the voice on the phone. My mom decided that she knew who did it, but she didn't even know the details. There was no investigation. No one was questioned. She told me it was a boy who was the same age as me who lived across the street. I knew that was impossible, but no matter how much I protested it, I was always told that it was him. Many years later, after I was an adult with my own children, we were at Christmas. Everyone was in the living room and I had gone into the back bedroom to change a diaper. As I was walking out of the room and back into the living room, I could hear my mom laughing, her voice as if she had been telling a joke. The faces of everyone else in the room told a different story. Discomfort, anguish, shock, fear, yet she was still laughing. It felt as if I was walking in slow motion. One of my older children had actually stopped me from entering the living room and sort of pushed me back into the room that I had just come out of. She just told the story of you being home alone and the man threatening to kill you. She told it like it was a joke or something, like some funny story from your childhood. My child told me. To this day, I never learned who it was that called me. I deal with my fear of ringing phones and phone conversations on a daily basis. It's awful. A few years back, I was a shift manager for a local big box pharmacy and convenience store. It was right across my backyard, and I could probably sprint there in under a minute if I really wanted to, so it really worked out for me. I was in my late 30s. I worked out quite a lot, and while I was fit, I was still a smaller girl. Even though I was married, I would constantly get hit on and asked out. It was pretty flattering, but it always made me feel really awkward. Now, this particular store I worked at was in a really weird part of town. It was on the right side of town to attract the Karens, but close enough to the not-so-good side of town to attract the drug addicts, drunks, and psychopaths. Anyway, let me say that I'm not someone that gets scared easily. I've had someone high on meth crash their car into the side of the store, causing the back of our store to bend inward because we didn't carry pineapple juice. I had a man pick me up and throw me over his shoulder and start walking out the door with me, saying that I'd make a good wife. Yeah, that's one for another time. Anyways, it all started on a Sunday morning. I remember this because I was really busy building end caps and making sell signs. I was working with my favorite coworker, so the day was flying by and I was really bubbly this day. There was a man and his son that came into the store and they made a beeline for me. The man was probably just a little under 6 foot and he was skinny. The man had dreadlocks and a long skinny silver earring dangling from his ear. He also had this really tan trench coat that I found really odd because it was summer. Nonetheless though, I had then greeted them and asked if they needed some help. The man spoke with a really thick Jamaican accent, and he said that his GPS stopped working, and he wanted to see if we had any. I let out a really small laugh, thinking he was messing with me. No, that would be at Best Buy or something, but we do have a small section of electronics on this wall over here. I indicated the wall to the back of me.
Oh, thanks,
he said, taking a look but also keeping his eyes on me. Something about those eyes just really chilled me. He was speaking another language to his son, but I kept going on about my task for the day, and he would call me to help him, asking me questions about chargers and SD cards. I answered them, and then he started telling me how beautiful I was. Really awkwardly, I had thanked him.
You must work out, yeah?
He asked. Yeah, yoga mostly. I replied while getting more and more uncomfortable now. He made some more comments about my body, telling me how he loved my tattoos, and he was just really being a creep. I tried to stay polite though, and eventually I just walked away to do some more work. I started to avoid him, but he was still staring at me. The man had his phone out, and I kept hearing the shuddering of a camera. I went to the office to tell my other coworker that I thought the guy was taking my picture, and I was just really feeling uncomfortable. He then came out and watched over me. Shortly after my coworker came out, the man and his son then left. By the time the end of my shift came, I forgot about him. A few weeks later, I was up front ringing customers with a different coworker. We were crazy busy that day, but I was the manager on duty. After we got the line down, my coworker then handed me an envelope. What's this? I asked her. I don't know, some man in dreadlocks told me to give it to you, she said. I took the envelope and I went into my office with it. Inside of the envelope were dozens and dozens of pictures of me. My heart sank. I had no idea that these were taken. Most of them were of me in the store while working. Some of me walking home, and some even with me and my daughter. I felt sick. There was also a note with it. It said something along the lines of,
You're so beautiful. I'm in love with you. I'd be a much better husband than what you have now. Please give me a chance.
There was more to it, but it's in police evidence now. The guy really stupidly left his name and address. I then called our store manager as well as the police. They took our camera footage, my statement, and the pictures and letter. They told him that he really needed to stay away from me or the next time he's getting arrested and he's banned from the store. I was really relieved but still really bothered by it. A few more weeks to about a month then went by. It was another really busy Sunday night. It was just myself as the manager on duty, and we had another coworker as my cashier. We were ringing things up together when I noticed a man staring at me. The man was tall with a medium build. He had dreadlocks and he had the same earring and long trench coat as the other man did. This man was really scary. His eyes were just cold and really dead and angry. It felt like they were staring right through my soul. He didn't have anything to purchase, just stood and stared. I tried to smile politely at him, then another wave of customers came. I got lost in helping everyone, but didn't see the man anymore. Even when things calmed down, I still didn't see him. I decided to go start facing the back of the store, and I told my coworker to call me if she needed me. As I was back there, I heard that Jamaican accent and all over. I looked up at the mirror to see that same scary man on the phone.
Yeah, she's here. No, it's just one other girl here with her. I can grab her when she leaves. No problem.
I was absolutely horrified. He didn't see me, so I slowly made my way up to the front. I briefly tell my coworker what's going on and then called the police and store manager. The cops took him away. A few days later, a detective came to speak to me. The two men were brothers. They were abducting women and actually using them for human trafficking. He told me I was really lucky. I later found out that they had apparently found a woman beaten to death in their apartment. They've both since gone to prison. This still gives me really bad nightmares. What happened to that woman could have easily been me, but thank God it wasn't. I'm a 24-year-old male, and this happened to me a few years ago when I was around 21. I remember because it was shortly after my birthday in December. It was really cold outside and there was snow on the ground as we had just had a snowstorm pass through our area. I lived with my parents at the time, and my mom is not really a fan of driving in the snow, so she asked me if I could drive her to the gas station for her to pick up some cigarettes for her and my dad, as well as a few other items they might have needed. I said sure, as I wasn't really doing anything at the time, and I grabbed my keys, then following her to the car. I remember the cold air hitting your face pretty hard that night, so it had to be at least around the teens, which made the snow and whatever else was on the roads really slippery. This is important to know for later on in the story. The nearest gas station was about 5 minutes away from us, but given the conditions of the roads, it took us about 10 to get there. Once I was able to park the car, my mom got out of the car, then made her way inside the store. From where I was parked, I could see her inside the store standing in the line that was leading up to the register. I kept the car running as it was really cold and I just didn't want to be sitting in the car without any heat. I was browsing on my phone while waiting for my mom to get done, and right around that time I had seen her finally approach the register. There was a black truck that pulled up into the parking spot right next to my car. I found this a bit unusual given that the parking lot was empty, so there was really no reason for them to park right next to the spot where I was. But I kinda just chalked it up to them wanting to be as close to the entrance as they could, given how cold it was that night. No one got out of the car at first, but I didn't even notice this until I looked up to see my mom walking out of the entrance back to the car. I glanced over to the truck's passenger side window, and I could just make out a figure sitting in the passenger seat, and they were facing in my direction. My mom opened the door, then got inside, before then asking me what I was looking at. I told her about the truck pulling up well over a few minutes ago around the same time that she approached the register, but that nobody had gotten out. She first chalked it up to maybe they were just waiting for someone inside the store to come out, but when I mentioned seeing a figure in the passenger side of the car looking towards our direction, she then began to sense why I was so spooked out by it. She told me to just back out and get out of there, and that we didn't need to worry about them once we drove off. As soon as I put the car into reverse and then began to back up, the passenger door swung open and hit the side of my car. A tall, very built man stepped out from the car as soon as the door made contact with my car. I hit the brakes as soon as I felt the contact, and the man stood there before throwing his hands up at me and then staring in my direction. I didn't really know what to do as I'd never really been in any sort of accident before, and my mom was sitting right there next to me and could see as well as I had that the door had not been opened until we had already started moving. The man slowly walked up to my window and just stood there. I cracked it very slowly and I told the man that I was sorry, but that I didn't see the door open as I was backing out. For a brief moment, he didn't really say anything. That is, before he simply asked,
"Roll down your window a little bit more. I can barely hear you."
I knew this couldn't be true as it was really quiet in that area, and I wasn't even speaking in a low tone. I told him that I'd prefer to keep it cracked as I really didn't want to let cold air get into the car. This really angered the man, and he immediately spoke in a more angered tone now. He was telling me to roll down my window yet again. I again told him no, and this is when things then took a turn for the absolute worse. Without any warning whatsoever, the man smacked my window really hard with his hand. Startled, I immediately jumped back and rolled the window up. My mom was right beside me, just absolutely yelling for me to just back out and leave. But I was really afraid of hitting the man in the process as he was still right next to my car. The man kept smacking my window really hard a few more times before he then tried punching it. It was right at this point where I realized that if I didn't get my mom and I out of there fast, this guy was definitely going to hurt us. I could see the cashier inside the gas station heard what was going on, and he looked to be on the phone with what I could only assume was the police. But there was absolutely no way I could wait for them, as the man was now both punching at my window and now kicking my door. It was like some switch had then flipped on in this man's head, and he had just totally lost it. I told my mom to hold on as I put the car into reverse again and backed out of there as fast as I could, just barely missing the guy by a few inches. I pulled fully out of the parking spot before the man ran out in front of our car and slammed his hands right on the hood. I sat there frozen, not knowing what to do, as the man looked right back at me. I turned the car wheel, then sped around him, trying to avoid him the best that I could before booking it the hell out of there. After that, I honestly thought that was the end of it. But as we made our way down the road to a stoplight, I was able to see headlights that was fast approaching from behind our car. And once it was close enough behind us, I could then see that it was the same truck the man was in. There appeared to be two people inside of it. I assumed the man I encountered must have been the passenger, and I guess the driver was someone I hadn't noticed before. I told my mom that it was them behind us, and she started to freak out and call my dad, then letting him know what was going on. We were still probably about 10 minutes away from our house given the road conditions, but I knew that there was no way that I could get us back to our house in that amount of time before these guys tried to ram us off the road, or whatever else they had planned for us. My dad told my mom for us to attempt to head back towards our house and that he would try and meet us halfway in his truck. She told me this, and I agreed that this had to be our best option, given that I couldn't turn around and head back to the gas station still not knowing if the police had even been called or not. So once the light turned green, I punched on the gas and sped off. I'm gonna be completely honest. I really wasn't being that cautious of the road at this point, as there really weren't any other cars at this point of the night. There were a few times where the car slid from the ice on the road, and I knew that it would only take one turn of the wheel to lose control, but I wasn't gonna slow down and let these guys catch up to us. After about a few minutes of driving, we were able to see headlights right in front of us on the other side of the road. I was thinking that it had to be my father, and as we got a little closer, we were able to make out his truck beyond the lights. Very surprisingly, the truck was still behind us, still keeping pace with me given the road conditions. I could see my father cut across a midsection of the roads and then stop shortly off the side of the road. I started to slow down right as we approached and then pulled off to the side of the road, the truck still following me. As I came to a stop, the same man from before that was in the passenger seat hopped out of the car, then started making his way to our car. The driver opened his door, but before he could step out, both of the men stopped dead in their tracks at the sound of my father's voice. I suggest that both of you hop back in that car and drive right on out of here before I put a bullet in the both of you. I could see my dad walking out into the light, radiating from both his and my headlights. He had his 9mm pistol pulled and aimed right at the man's head as he stood right next to my car. I pretty much just watched as both of the men just stood there for a brief moment as my dad slowly inched his way towards them. The man then very slowly backed away towards his truck before then speaking to what I assumed was my father.
"You're really lucky you got here when you did."
The man laughed and jumped back into his truck before it quickly backed out and drove off in the other direction. My dad walked to my window and he asked me and my mom if we were okay. I remember telling him that other than being scared shitless, I think we were fine. Shortly afterwards, my dad followed us back home just to make sure no one else followed us. I really have no idea what those men's intentions were or why the man acted the way he did. All I know is that if I hadn't reacted how I did to get my mom and I out of there, I just really hate to think what those men would have done to us. This happened to me about 6 years ago. I'm now 26 and I'm also married with 2 awesome kids. For some context, I'm a guy. This is what happened to me. I tried so many times to leave my ex-girlfriend, who we'll call Sarah. Whenever I would tell her that I wanted to see other people or that I should move out so that we have room to breathe, she would always go crazy and threaten to kill or cut herself or even drive her car off of a bridge. Mind you, where I live, there really isn't any bridges. Anyways, one day I run into my ex-girlfriend, who we'll call Rachel, at the mall. We ended on good terms, so we had actually talked like nothing happened. I had told Rachel about my situation with Sarah and how I really wasn't happy with her, and that I was really scared that she was going to do something to harm herself. Rachel told me if I was really worried that much that I should let one of her family members know. So one day during work, I called her on my lunch and told her we should have dinner and talk. I also ran to our place and got all of my things and my dogs and moved everything back into my parents' house. I know, that's really messed up, but you have to understand that she was crazy, like really crazy. When we went to dinner, I told her in public that we should break up because I just wasn't happy anymore. And to be honest, I really hadn't been for a while. I mean, we had been together for about 3 years and I just wasn't happy. I had actually told her a few months after we started dating that I thought we were better off as friends. Anyways, so we break up and I go back to my parents' house, which they really weren't happy about because they knew how she was and they were really scared that she was going to do something to the house, or maybe even worse. They wanted me to go to a family member's house instead, but I mean really, who would actually take 2 big dogs and me on top of this giant load of drama? Later that night, when me and my dad are talking in the living room, all of a sudden we hear the sound of my truck alarm then go off and the sound of glass break. My heart sank. I just knew it was Sarah. I go outside calmly trying to talk to her like an adult, and she just starts hitting me and spitting in my face, telling me I'm a piece of crap and all these other crazy things. I kid you not, I didn't touch her not one time, and I never raised my voice. I tried to get her to relax and at the same time telling my dad everything was okay. I can handle this, just go back inside. Finally, after about a half hour of just getting hit and yelled at, she eventually leaves, peeling out of my parents' neighborhood. Let's fast forward a few days later. I end up getting a visit from the cops asking where I was the night of this night and blah blah blah. You know how it goes. I tell them, but they don't believe me. They say that they want to take me downtown for some questions. Being the decent person that I am, I decide to go willingly. And well, what do you know? It turns out that she had filed a report on me saying that I beat her and also held her at gunpoint to get all of her money from her safe, and that I also wanted the PIN numbers to her card. For a while, I didn't even say anything because I was just so shocked at this point. I then tell the cops, "Look at me. I'm the one that has cuts and bruises here. She did that. I didn't do anything to her." Their response, "Sir, she's a lady. We have to hear her side on this, and we're going to need to take some DNA samples from you." Well, I give them what they need, and long story short, I'm thrown in jail waiting for a hearing. About 2 weeks go by and the results came back. And you guessed it, totally negative. Also, I forgot to mention this, but me and Rachel ended up getting back together, but the harassment never stopped. Sarah made it impossible for me to move on with my life. For almost a year, I would get constant visits from cops asking why I was stalking her. Sarah even hired a private investigator to follow me and Rachel around. Every time I got a visit from a cop, I always had something backing me up on where I was whenever Sarah claimed I was stalking her. She had 4 restraining orders filed against me when I never even had anything to do with her. Finally, the judge was sick of it. I guess he had finally seen just how crazy she was because he didn't issue any more restraining orders after that. Me and Rachel almost didn't make it through this. Sarah made my life hell, but I'm really glad I ended things with her. So Sarah, wherever you are, I really hope you find the help you need, and I pray and hope no other man ever has to go through this. This happened to me and my friends about 20 years ago. I'm now a 38-year-old female. I live in Tennessee and we have a place here called Little Egypt. It's basically a swimming hole and me and my friends had been there like a million times at night. It was the middle of summer and the country fair was in town. Me and my twin sister and 2 of our friends had went and hung out like normally teenagers do. We had ran into our mom, stepdad, and little sister while we were at the fair, and we had told our mom that we were going to Little Egypt to goof off, as we had done that a lot during the summer. I remember she specifically told me and my twin sister not to go down there that late because, anything could happen. We were 18 years old at the time, and of course, you don't usually listen to your parents much at that age. So we just told her she was crazy and that nothing would happen to us. We wait till around midnight and we decide to go to the swimming hole. It was me and my friend Lisa in one car, and my twin sister and our friend Heather in another car. Now, when you get to the swimming hole, it's out in the woods, probably about 10 minutes from any civilization and nowhere to turn around unless you go up on the road. We then pull in and we get out of the cars, and we're still standing pretty closely to the cars because we hadn't gotten out our flashlights and stuff that we were going to take with us. I start to walk towards the car my twin sister was standing at, and all of a sudden we hear some sticks breaking. I then look at my sister and softly said, "Did you hear that?" She replied back with yes, and that maybe it was Lisa messing with us. We then tell Lisa to quit trying to scare us and that it really isn't funny. Lisa then says that she didn't do it, then all of a sudden out of nowhere we hear a lot of sticks breaking. My sister and Heather then jump back into their car and I ran to Lisa's car. We barely managed to jump in her car in time. Now, she has automatic seatbelts and it nearly broke my damn shoulder getting in so fast. I don't really know how we got the cars turned around in that little space we had, but when we did so, I kid you not, there was about 6 guys dressed in black head to toe with masks on that then jumped out of the woods right where we were parked at. They also had baseball bats and they were chasing after us. About 3 days later, we had decided to go back down there and there was police crime tape all over the place. We also saw some other people there and we asked them what happened. They said some guy got beaten to death about 3 nights ago, which also happened to be the same exact night that the other 6 guys had jumped out on us. I'm really thankful that we managed to get away when we did, but my heart really breaks for the guy that lost his life that night. This world really is crazy.